This computer. Hey everybody, Amy Hauser with Made for More with Amy K. Hauser. I am back today for another Mirror Word chat. And you guys, I have my beloved friend Illiana
Mm.
Esquivel joining us today. I am so excited to be here with you, girl. Say hello.
Oh, I'm so excited to when I received your invitation, I wrote it to you, right? Like I felt my heart leaping like a kid because I've seen your interviews with other friends, from the Mirror group. So when you invited me, I was like, yay.
Yay! Well, you know what I do? I mean, it's kind of a balance of people either saying, "Hey, I'd love to be on there," or me reaching out to people. So it's kind of a nice balance. And I just always am like, "Okay, Spirit, like who? Who?" And because sometimes it's people I know well online, and sometimes it's not. But you guys, so Ileana and I go back to, well, let's see, we probably started in the mirror, first met in the mirror.
Mhm.
And then was that 2 years ago, this summer
Yeah,
that we met
yeah,
in San Antonio,
yeah.
Texas, for John Crowder, Baxter Kruger gathering at a church in San Antonio. And it was like, yay! So my friend Karen Bean and I drove from Houston to San Antonio. And you guys, just, it was such a joy. That was a fun, extremely hot weekend, as I recall. And I mean, you're in Mexico, I'm in Texas. We know hot, but that
Yeah,
was a really hot weekend. But
yeah.
so much fun. And just to get to know your heart more, spend time doing fun things and being in the conference together. Gosh, we had Matt Spinks and a lot of the Indiana folks were there, and just others from all over the country, and a handful in from Texas. And we have stayed in touch through recordings, like, well, not recordings, sorry, but Zoom calls from time to time, and just journeying, walking through life. You were very much a presence when there were some really hard things for a year in there for me. And
Mm.
yeah, it's so good to reconnect on here. And so, Ileana, let tell us a little bit about you and just like how you got from, well, kind of tell us a little bit about your background, growing up in church, not in church, a little bit, and then how you got to
Mm.
the mirror. So give us a little background on you.
Okay. I love that. I love that. Um, well, I did grow up in a Catholic background.
Okay.
I went to a Catholic school, and you know, something about me is that God has given me a very philosophical mind, a
Mhm.
very like a mind that's just curious, about knowledge and very intellectual as well. So I now as an adult, I wasn't aware of it back then, but as an adult, I can look back at like my little Illiana mind back then, absorbing everything that I was being told and truly considering it, like looking at it and seeing, okay, if this is true, then this means that, Um and why am I touching on this subject? Because recently I had a conversation with my brother who was also in that school, in that Catholic school, and I remember asking him, do you feel like being in that Catholic school did something to your psyche? Because I felt it had done something to mine in the sense of, the message that you're a sinner. And um, I remember one story in second grade when I was gonna have my first communion, and the teacher told us this story that we had to ask for forgiveness and make sure that we come to the first communion with like a clean heart. Because if we don't, she shared the story that I don't know if this is, I don't know where she got this from, but that one time the Eucharist, like the body of Christ, said no to a kid and basically like rejected like the Eucharist,
Oh,
and that something miraculous happened and that the Eucharist like basically
God
said
approved.
no. yeah, I don't know, I don't remember exactly the details, but she said like God said no, so the kid didn't have communion that day. And that struck with me. I remember one day before my first communion, crying. I was what, like 7 years
Yeah, I
old,
was gonna
eight?
say 6, 7, 8.
Yeah. And I was crying with my godmother, who was gonna be with me that day, and telling her, I don't want to go there with an unclean heart. As a 7 year old, I remember that moment.
Oh my gosh, Ileana, that's like, I am so sorry. Like, but talking about putting the fear into a child, whether she created that story, like the God we know would never say no, right? You can't
Yeah,
put, and to anyone, let alone a child,
yeah,
and to, oh, that would leave that would leave an impression on you. Okay,
yeah.
so keep going.
That was the thing though, because I asked my brother this question because I knew now as a grown up and looking back at my story, and how much I've um like let go of programming from my past. I could see that it did leave an impact, like this concept of um you're either good or bad, and if you're bad, like God is not approving of you, and all this mental um fear unconsciously. And he was like, not really. I'm like, seriously? But because I can see he's very different to me. So that's the reason why I was saying I know that God has given me like a very philosophical mind, that even back then I was taking it in, and I was, considering, like, I was slowly like building my theology, even if I didn't know it was theology back then.
Yes.
Whereas maybe my brother or other kids, I don't know, were like, I don't know, I just want to play. But I was like, I don't want to be unclean when I go up there to have first communion. So I'm just sharing this little anecdote to maybe give you an idea of how much I cared for theology, even if I didn't know it was theology, for like my concept of reality,
Right.
for yeah, my definition of existence. And then it was when I was 15 years old, yeah, that I came to live to Monterrey, and I started high school, yeah, and that was the first time that I wasn't in a religious school. So in high school, I started having also philosophy classes, which were like a treat to my philosophical mind. I was like, whoa, like there's a whole world,
Yeah.
to this, and I can explore it with my mind and the knowledge. And that was a shock. It was a shock to me because to be for the first time in an environment where not everyone believed in God. And we were having in our philosophy classes, debate as well about belief and atheism. And I was being exposed to all these other beliefs and ideas. And I went through a whole shock. I remember I had nights. I've always been very like mentally intense. I can recognize it even as a little kid, because as a teenager, also coming back from like those philosophy classes, this was the first time that I actually started asking myself, do I really believe in God? Or did I just believe something someone else told me? And I remember coming back home, and having like this quite big questions as a teenager, and calling my mom, because my mom didn't live here in Monterrey, I lived with my grandparents, and calling my mom and crying on the phone and telling her I don't know what I believe, and it's overwhelming. I don't know if God's real. Like, what do you think? Is God real?
Great that you were able to have those kind of conversations,
Yeah.
and that you experience that kind of thing. I mean, just seeing you, knowing you, I mean, literally, that is you. the thinking, the questioning, the deep places of God have always been there. Like, it's so beautiful because, like I felt like I didn't, there was a lack of safety I felt in certain ways growing
Mm.
up, but yet there was a rest that I just always knew. And so I guess that is your theology. Any thoughts you have about God, your creator, is a theology. Whether you believe he's not real is a theology. That's your stance,
Yeah.
your your perspective on that. So how did that continue for you as you were growing, learning? Your foundation kind of sounded a little bit shaky because of the Catholic school, or like in terms of feeling really peaceful about it. But then you're going through high school. You're now not probably maybe going to church or not really going to church.
No,
And
no.
and then now exposed to peers and other ideas outside of religious constructs. So then
Yeah.
what happened next?
So then I faced that. I faced like the big questions, do I believe in God or I don't, or don't I truly? And I uncovered during high school, during those years, that I didn't really believe in him, that I only believed something someone else told me, that I didn't truly believe in God. And so for a while, this lasted maybe like 4 months. I called myself an atheist. But it was a very short period of time because even back then, I had so many signs and wonders happen. So I always share this, like this period, short period, with these words. It was since I had so many signs and wonders happening in my life, it was either I'm going crazy or there is something more, right? And I literally I faced that experience as like, what's going on? Because when I was a kid, I wasn't really aware of the signs and wonders, but that period of time where I was like going through my facing what do I truly believe, that's when it started happening in a more frequent way. And when I called myself an atheist, I had all these signs and wonders, and I was like, what's going on? Like, am I going
Pushing
crazy?
them aside. No, no, no.
Yeah, like, no, what's this? But then I came into in one of our philosophy classes, I believe, and I had a really cool class in high school. I love my teacher from that class. It was called, I had several philosophy classes, but I also had a class called Theory of Knowledge.
Wow.
And that was a different one. It was, yeah, philosophical, but it was more into how does human being get to know things, and how are you certain of knowledge? And it was very deep. So through one of those classes, I came across the concept of agnosticism,
Mhm.
you know, someone who says that that kind of knowledge you cannot be certain about knowledge. So I was comfortable with that. I thought at first I was an atheist, but then all these signs and wonders happened, and I'm like, am I going crazy? What's this? Either I'm going crazy or there might be something more. And then agnosticism came in as like a comfortable stepping stone for a moment, because it said you can't know for sure. And I'm all right saying you can't know for sure. It's that kind of knowledge is beyond human, like grasp. That's what, along the lines of,
That was their message. That was their
yeah,
label that they put with that. Yeah.
yeah. So I walked as an agnostic for several years, maybe till from maybe when I was 17 all the way up to 23. Yeah, it was 23. And then when I was 23, I had an experience that again exposed me to um, like spiritual knowledge. And that's where I knew, okay, this is knowledge that is not out of reach, because I'm getting to know things, it's not out of reach. I can reach it. I can actually find truth. Um and uh that's when I stopped calling myself an agnostic, and I started slowly. Maybe back then I wasn't, I considered myself spiritual but not religious, and I felt like this connection to the trees and to the universe, which is, I feel like I have a really a, a fondness for people in New Age, for example, because I found myself there, and I know that there's like this thirst for truth and the knowing that God is not separate from us.
Right. They're getting part of it for sure,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Seeing
So
it part.
yeah, so I feel like that's what I started connecting to, when I said, yeah, I feel a connection with the universe. In a way, I was trying to establish the fact that God's not separate, that we are, the universe is me. It's all these molecules, and my body is molecules, and we're in this existence together, so there's no separation. So um that was several years, and you can, I can stop if you want to comment.
Well, now I was just gonna, I don't know if you want to segue, but in this, but because I do want to hear how you got into the mirror, but when you're talking about that, in essence, from a scientific perspective, right? Like yes, nature, yes, coming to the realization, all of the cosmos, my being, I'm connected to the trees, I'm connected to the stars, I'm connected to the air and to others, and you start waking up to that realization at this you're going through this in a very different journey, which is why I love to hear about everybody's journey. But that has always been something for you, right? Science, understanding connectivity, understanding the body. I know water, that's actually where we first connected. That's what it was. Because we first had a conversation in a breakout group and something about water, and we got talking, and you're like, like that's a huge thing for me. If you want, go, segue for a minute and tell us a little bit about that. Just like you were science by nature, you were
Yes,
inquisitive, you were philosophical, you were intellectual. And
yes,
so did that start awakening some things for you on who God was with the water connection, or however you want
yeah,
to take that, girl?
yeah, yeah. I think you are describing it very well. I was very scientific. I was very like, I want to find out for myself.
Yeah.
And eventually, back in 2020, I started being exposed to water science. And water science, man, it it opened my mind and my perspective in a way that I didn't know that water could do that. You know how water connects to everything, and water is there like in the background of life and sustaining life.
Mm.
And I was fascinated by water. Um and started, connecting dots. The water lens also kind of takes you to I feel it goes a little with Gnosticism in a way, because I did have a those years when I started being exposed to water science. I started having a Gnostic experience as well, in the sense that there's so much knowledge there. There's so much, um not mm, not theory, but literal, like logical, scientific knowledge that you just come up to the conclusion, and I started understanding, no wonder ancient civilizations had such a profound understanding of phenomena, of like nature, of things, even if they didn't have the tools, because we can get to that knowledge
Yes.
in our own, the design of God's, creation in our the human body. um so I started, yeah, do you want to say something?
Yeah, no, I just like, I love that because there's that gnosko, that inner knowing, right? There's something in our being, right? That's that union, that's that Christ in you before we even knew. He came, he put himself in us, and then that's the awakening that starts to come. And so what that's going to look like for people is so different across the globe. And so one person that's sitting in a pew and doing it that way and going through, and then they wake up, that was kind of my, actually
Oh,
exactly what happened at one point, where I was just like sitting there going, wait a minute, I mean, I can read all of this, but there's something deep inside that knows something more. There's so much more available here than what I'm just getting on Sunday and leaving at the end of the hour and going back to my regular life, and the world sucking that knowledge out of me again. Not knowledge, that awareness of it, and then it comes back in, and it's like there's so much here to be explored. And so what you're saying, even where people are, before they even knew what they knew, before the Bible was there, before, or whatever, indigenous people that are elsewhere, and they're experiencing this awakening in the body through the
yeah,
cells, through the blood. Remember, right? The light that's in the blood. Remember you and
yeah,
I talking about that. In everything that starts to say, there's so much here. You're not alone in this universe. It's not up to you to make your way. You did not create yourself, and there is no, and it's not a purposeless existence. There's
yeah,
something here. Quiet yourself, which is much harder for us to do in this time and space in time than it was then to quiet yourself and listen to that voice of life that's in you,
yes,
moving through you, whether you have the example of water. Back then, they couldn't even see, they didn't know about the molecules of the cell, but they knew it in a way that we have forgotten because we've gotten so intellectual about it that we have forgotten the life force that's just there presenting
yes,
itself all the time. So, anyway, continue.
yes. Yes, I want to give an example of that I actually shared in the water episode of the podcast. I was sharing how, for example, indigenous cultures, they describe, um they knew that air was inside water before scientific tools saw that there was an oxygen atom inside the water
Wow.
molecule. They knew, but they said air, right? Like, because they work with the four elements: air, fire, water, and
Exactly.
earth. And yeah, so they said air is inside water, and they knew it. And then many years later, science comes and says there's an oxygen atom inside the water molecule. And I'm like, what? That's so fascinating that they called it before.
I think there's so much of that, Ileana. I think there's so much because he has been speaking to us from the beginning of time, whenever
Yes,
that was, before the beginning of time. And then
yes,
we have moved from the inner knowledge into the intellectual knowledge as our source.
yes,
And we're
yes,
going back
yes,
where we won't be taught by teachers, but by the living Christ in us, moving
yes.
through us, shining light into the entire cosmos,
Amen.
reflecting it back. And so, yeah, there's just so much on that, but
Yeah.
we need to go there right now. Okay, so yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, we can go wherever we want to go on this, but
I do want to
yeah,
continue to a point where water took me, because I
yes,
was exploring all these, like, and I do say I love that you brought up a word, ginosko, right? Ginosko, because God used that word to bring correction to me in a loving way. I would say maybe more like clarity when I met Christ, because I explored water science and water consciousness from 2020 to 2022, when my encounter with Christ started, which was 2022. But all this time before meeting Christ, my search was still very like Gnostic. It was very intellectual. It was very yeah, I was uncovering like many things like these indigenous cultures about existence, about the universe. However, I still felt, and this was like the turning point for me to Jesus, I still felt empty. I still felt I had like so much understanding,
Mm.
but I felt still like this emptiness in my heart. And yeah, basically like what's the point of knowing so much if I still feel this way, and I'm not fulfilled, and I don't feel connection, which I knew that I was made for connection, for love, and I didn't feel that love. And that's when Jesus started like peeking into my reality.
So good. When he peeks into our reality.
He's so good, yeah. And he started, speaking precisely in my language, which is something that I love. That he wasn't requiring me to go to church.
Nope.
No, he was saying hi through my like, hey, I'm here, through what I already knew. For example, through water, he was like started saying hi through water with what I was observing in water. And um
I love that. He started saying hi. That's, oh, I'm sorry, man.
yeah, because it was
Okay.
the way, wow, the what I'm seeing right now is like it was almost as if I was so focused in the details of water, and I was like this with water, and I couldn't see the big picture. and and he started like bringing me back to see the big picture, and there it was, like his face smiling at me, you know like
Uh,
you've been so focused on the form. This is why I say the difference between form and substance is love, and love is Jesus, right? The Trinity. I was so focused on the form, and I feel like that's the difference between like Gnosticism and the word you use, ginosko. I did have a moment where after I slowly started opening my heart to Jesus and seeing, oh my gosh, it was you all along. Like you were the truth.
I love it.
You have always been there, and you were there in the water, and you were there in the science, and you were there in like all the things that I was exploring, but you were the big picture. You were like the big smile in all of it. But I was so focused in the form, that I was missing the entire message. I was as if literally we can do that with the Bible as well, right? Like I was so focused in a line, maybe, and the meaning of that, just that text, instead of looking at the big picture and seeing like all of it. And when I started having this encounter with Christ, and I started feeling this fondness for him, you know, as if I was meeting a friend, and feeling love for him slowly. And that's when he revealed to me, he brought this word to my attention, ginosko, which is, I don't remember the verse, but it comes up in the Bible. It says ginosko man. And in that context, I could understand what he was telling me through the verse that I read. Uh, and I wish I could recall it, but I don't remember it.
Colossians? Is it in Colossians like 1 and 2, or also Ephesians? I don't know. It's
I
in
don't I,
often.
I don't remember, but because I what I took from that was the message itself. And
Um,
what he wanted to bring my attention to was that it's not that gnosis is bad. It's just that I'm missing out on the beauty of this other kind of knowledge, because he said it this way. You've been trying to know me through gnosis, because if you try to know the universe and everything and life itself, well, life is Jesus, right? So, and God is everything. So he said, you've been trying to know me through gnosis. And that's like trying to get to know someone. But instead of opening your heart to them and having conversation and having, pleasant time together and having friendship, instead, you're like a mad scientist performing a lobotomy on their brain and saying like, how are you wired? Let me see let me understand mentally, intellectually, how you're wired. It's so cold, you know?
Oh my gosh, Illiana, that is so good. I needed
It's
that today too, because I'm telling you, like I'm complete opposite of you that way. I am just a no gnosko person. Like I just know, I just need these things, and I don't remember the scriptures, but I know the heart of it. I know what it's like to be held in the dark, dark places of the night alone and just being where that presence just fills me. But sometimes to explain it intellectually in conversation where people are breaking down all these things, they look at me like I'm crazy. They're like, what are you talking about? And it's like, so I'm feeling so much of the presence right now. So thank you for that because yes. And it's really a both and though, right? This
Mhm.
intellectual helps us sometimes
Yeah.
articulate the other. And so that's why conversations like this are so precious because it's not a you're right, you're wrong.
Mm-mm.
It's never been that.
No.
It's let's learn and show up with this love that he has literally and just poured out so graciously, so lavishly on us, where we can literally look at another, whether they are from a new age or they're very strict in their doctrine in, say the Baptist church or something else, and go, what are you learning? What are you experiencing? Oh, that helps with this. And we're seeing different facets. Some are looking under the microscope, some are looking from the top of the cosmos over down. Some are looking from here, and he's like, and I'm in you and I'm with you all. And we're just exploring and living in this life. Choose life, right?
Yes.
You
Yes.
choice of life or death, blessing or curse. Choose life.
Yeah.
So your descendants will live because the blood and the laughter and the joy is just pulsating through your veins and it's going to carry out wherever you go into
Hmm.
this generation, the next, the past, and it starts to change things. And literally that oxygen, that breath of life comes into every cell, every molecule and fills
Wow.
it with life and makes us reverse in aging. Anyway, there we go. Random. I love it though.
He's there. He's in everything.
So
He's in.
he's taken you, he's showing you, he's pulling you up, he's doing the whole gnosko thing versus knowing and the true knowing, right? There's knowing and then there's knowing.
Yeah.
And he took you on that ride. And
Yeah.
from there, it wasn't probably shortly after that you popped on the mirror or something.
Yes. Yes. Then that takes me. My encounter was in 2022. Um, it started May, and then I got baptized. Not because I thought it was a requirement, but because I was falling in love with Jesus, so I wanted like that moment with him. Um, in September. And then I started reading my Bible. Well, I started reading my Bible before getting baptized because I felt God was telling me to, but I didn't want to. I'll be honest, I didn't want to. I even got angry at him. I One day I was very angry at God and I was telling him, "Why do you want me to read the Bible if because I related it to the religion that hurt me in my childhood." And um yeah, I told him, "Why do you want me to read that which separated me from you?" Literally, I saw that in the Bible or in religion. And I told him, I promised you that I wouldn't let that get in the way between you and me anymore. And he or ever again. And he let me know through his miraculous ways, that this time it would be different, that this time I would start reading with the Holy Spirit, and that he would reveal things through his word. So I started reading, but um I got the most traditional version here in Spanish. And as soon as I started reading, I started facing, like the hell passages. And again, I found myself in this place like, why does your word say this? Like, I don't understand. And facing the challenges of this, this looking at those like hell verses through what had been taught to me in my childhood about them didn't pair up with who I was knowing in that moment, like the person that I was falling in love with in that moment. So that's when it was through a discipleship call. I expressed through to my friend who disciples me. I told her, I'm really overwhelmed by these hell verses, because I can't understand how someone would be okay with God sending their loved ones and being told that God loves their loved ones, but he's still doing that. Like it it doesn't add up, and it doesn't look like him, the person that I'm knowing. And I I, I was even crying, like, out of my confusion. Like, I again, I can be like mentally intense. um and then she was the one who told me, she said, I think you should read the Mirror Bible. And I'm like, okay. And that's when I started reading the Mirror.
Okay. And then so that, like, you just started reading it first for a while before you
Yes.
found the online stuff?
Yes.
Yeah. And it obviously had an impact on,
Mm-hmm.
and so it was like they were just sent to you to kind of say, let's see how we can hear the heart of God
Yeah.
that you've experienced. Like, so that's what, you know what? Okay, so here's a thought. Because when I first read it too, I was just like, the section that I first read was Understanding the Bible, which is at the front of the book that has Luke in it. And I mean, I just wept. I was like, this is my heart. This is what I hear in my heart, but I quiet that voice because it doesn't align with all the voices I hear around me. So I thought, well then, Amy, whatever you're hearing inside, nothing is affirming that, right? And then when I picked
Wow.
up the mirror, it affirmed what I was hearing inside. I'm like, I'm not crazy. He is that good. But it was like, I thought I was just being, I don't know, I hate to use the word narcissistic, but I was somehow thinking really good things. Like I was like elevating something inside of me that the world said I was a sinner about,
Mm-hmm.
and I needed to hold on to all of that and just be grateful and get on my face.
Mm-hmm.
And I somehow knew that that wasn't the way to live the life of our design. We're not going to stay there shackled to the ground, face down. And those mental constructs had to get broken. And reading the mirror just started to free that, and then to be exposed to other teachers that were saying the same things. People that
Yeah.
a lot in the Western church were being shunned, in essence, saying it's too good to be true. And I'm like, is it? Isn't that God that you had this beautiful experience with? And I have, in certain ways, had experiences with too, especially when I was first diagnosed with my breast cancer. Like, he just, back in 2010, just like leveled me to my, not to my face, just to my knees in awe of who he was. Not out of shame or sorrow or regret, right? But out of awe of how he was going to hold me through the coming year. And yeah, so the mirror starts to affirm those things that we're knowing. We've had experiential time with our Father. And then it just keeps going. And, when I say on here often, well, for one, it's not a complete version. We're using other things to also grow and learn
Yeah.
when he does lead us into the word, written word versus the living word, right?
Mhm.
It's a both and. But to have that text or have some reference to then interpret other scripture through that lens as it becomes our reality, backed by research, backed by a life of passion and experience that Francois and Lydia have encountered, gathered, and then releasing so that it continues to release within our own being and then
Yeah.
from there can grow and expand into the world around us
Yeah.
in our connectivity. It's beautiful. So then from there you started reading it, and then one
Yeah.
day you decided that it was okay to hop on a group or
Yeah. So I came across Rachel. I actually asked her, hey Rachel, that she had mentioned a Bible study online, and I asked her, and she added me to the group, and then I started joining the calls. And yeah, the rest is history. I feel that you touched on a very important point here, that this translation or any other translation, I feel like God is doing something very, very special in shifting our approach from, instead of looking at the text and building your perception entirely on it, your intellectual interpretation of it, because it's not that way. Turn, like Jesus himself said, right? You go to the scriptures looking for me, and but you refuse to come to me. And I feel like what he's doing right now is the other way around, like come to me, and now go, you can read whatever translation you want, just find me there. You will, because you have my spirit in you, you will find me there. And I feel like that's what you're describing, that the mirror translation, it didn't come to like uh present you something new. It literally just affirmed what you were knowing, ginosco. It came to put words in a translation,
yep.
to what you are already knowing. It wasn't like um it Francois came with the translation and said, this is the true gospel. No, like people are just finding it and saying, this is what Jesus has been showing me.
Yes. And to realize for those that have been like that know there's more. I mean, that's why made for more came up. We've mentioned that word several times. That was back in, let's see, must have been 2009 or even 2008 when he gave me that name for ministry, made for more. What more meant then has been layer upon layer of revelation of more. You know,
Mm.
because people could, worldly people could look at that and go, oh, she like prosperity because she's made for more. Like we need more. I need
Mhm.
bigger cars, bigger, more money, all of the things. That's all great. That can be a natural outflow of accessing the kingdom realm of money is not a problem. Access is not a problem because everything is yours, but that doesn't have to have that. That's what our worldly intellectual brings. This more has just been unveiling and unveiling of what our more is. And he's like, girl, you don't even know what more is yet. Like you have no idea how much more there is, right? And not having to intellectually go, well, I need to understand that. No, I don't now. More than ever, the less I know, the more I know.
Yeah, yeah. And that's, I love that you say that, because that was another thing that I was going to bring up. That phrase, the phrase that John Crowder says, that it's okay if we don't have all the answers, because the answer with a capital A has us.
Yes.
And the I also feel that hand in hand with this knowledge that it's okay if we don't know everything. I feel like an awareness that each person is in their own path of revelation. And of course it's going to be that way because it's a personal encounter. You know, we are his bride. We are his bride, you know, like we are falling in love with him. He's literally wooing us and loving on us. Like, how could it not be personal? We are his bride. It's a wedding, you know.
Yes.
It's so personal, and if it's personal, then it it's not, the answer is not going to come through like a doctrine that pretends like this is, you know, it's no, he's inviting you to a personal encounter, and he's gonna give you revelations that suit you for this moment in your life, whereas someone else will might have other revelations that suit them for this moment in their life. And then maybe in the future you'll have this revelation, you come together and you're both like, whoa, you know,
Yeah.
it's personal. It's yeah.
Personal and it's universal at the same time. Again, I keep saying both and today in this call for some reason because I think there is that personal element, yet so much of what it is, as we ask more questions, we spend more time just gazing into his eyes rather than needing answers to, solutions all the time. I let his, that gaze, that intimacy, that time of, um, back at the beginning when you mentioned something about some sort of scripture or something, and that to consider, we consider, which consider in the old, or really it's in both old and new, but is like meditative time, contemplation time, sitting with the Lord to consider something. And then I usually end up just wanting to be held, just to be seen with him and whatever he wants to share or show, and all those other thoughts just dissipate. But something heals in the mind, something heals and gets restored in that time of just being together. And then so that's like intimate, it's individual, yet there's things that are happening on more of a global scale that I don't think we understand as we sit in that place, right? It's like an ascension, but it's a different kind of ascending with him. Our heart intentions are set, and therefore, maybe it's to a people group or a circumstance or understanding, people gaining more revelation, whatever it might be. It might be about family, it might be about nothing. But he's doing something in all of that that is beyond, which gives us all that revelation that when people start to wake and know, when this word hits, they're like, I've already known this. Yes, you have, because we've accessed the universal gift of those that are awaiting their more, right? We're stepping into that place of our more. And it's just going to continue getting better and better all
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah.
And for folks that come against it, it's all right. Like, you know, it's they're not, they don't have the ears to hear yet. And that's
Yeah.
because they're on their journey, and that's okay.
Yeah, but they will. It's like it's love is so good. Like Jesus is so good that he's like, I'm still loving on you, and I'm like I'm just waiting for you to realize how good I am. And I have this big smile because um it's yeah, it's both and like personal and universal. And this has been such a week for me to realize that how through my personal and intimate romance with him, he lets me know I'm doing something everywhere, you
Yes.
know. And for example, I want to give an example of what has been going on this week, because actually I don't know, I think you saw that Francois posted a picture of um a mountain with clouds and a message that God had given him and Lydia through that mountain and clouds.
Oh, I don't know if I read
And
it or not. I'll have to see.
it's it was a recent post, and he was sharing an anecdote related to that many years ago. But he posted that picture, I think, yesterday, and literally 2 days before, I had taken this picture because God was speaking to me about something very similar to what he wrote.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And
Beautiful.
it's a similar picture to the one he posted with the mountain and like the clouds covering the mountain. And what he wrote was very similar to what the Lord was telling me
Mm,
and throughout this week. So I have this big smile because you're saying what you're saying is very real. It's both personal and universal. And when I saw that picture that Francois posted, I just giggled because I was like, Lord, you're doing something.
yes.
You're doing something universal here. It's like he's letting us know I'm here and yeah, I'm moving.
You know what? So I want to add to that because that's so beautiful and that's such a great example of what I was, yeah, like what I was trying to convey. Um, and there's this shift that happens when we live in this place of love that rather, you said you giggled when you saw that they're almost the same post. So the fact that Francois has a following per se, and people, a few hundred people might like that or whatever, and not very many people might see yours, or yours might be just for your own heart at this time, right?
Mhm.
You don't even share it. Don't know. But where we used to get in this place of platform meant I'm given the word
Mm.
and people need to listen and do and yield to whatever because of my word versus when we encourage one another to go, there is no greater than or less than. This is all sons of God realizing their inclusion, their sonship, and rising to that occasion, sons being a class of people who know who they are, beloved sons of the creator of the universe, who are realizing their new creation in Christ,
Amen.
waking up to the reality of what is. And so it isn't about that. It's just going, yes. And the more we open that and our heart is in that posture of love and appreciation to, oh, I want to hear your side. What did you get from that? It's not a, oh, wait, I got it first, or that. And I think there used to be some of that kind of thing, and we're losing that. We're
Yeah.
all one. We're brothers and sisters. We're in this together. So,
Yeah. The phrase you used right now, you said how this attitude of, this post that I said, like, I'm giving the word. And what I heard inside of me was, no, it's the word is giving me. Like,
yes.
the word is giving me. Like, here's Illiana, she's my daughter, she's my expression, and there's
Yeah,
her loving. And here's Amy, like the word is giving you, here's Amy, that's my expression through her. And the giggles, the love, the joy, that's his kingdom.
right. And our unique expression to steward whatever it is we're experiencing, encountering, hearing, feeling, whatever. So good.
Yeah.
So real quick, Ileana, let's kind of wrap up with tell us a little bit about what you're doing with water right now and with you mentioned your podcast. And I know that's something new that you're doing a visual artistic podcast, right?
Yeah.
So I want you, and I've seen some of those. I want you to tell us a little bit about that. And then in the notes, in the description, I'll be able to link to that so people can check those things out. So tell us a
Okay.
little bit about first your water experience and how that's what you're doing.
Okay. Yes, so on one side I have my water business. um and the water business comes, I love it because it comes along with all this water education that I was speaking of minutes ago, right? The water science that opened my eyes to many different things. Of course, um it's not like everyone wakes up to that water science. What the device offers is like health, like a healthy water, living water. However, the education of the science, especially for people like um in these revelations and conversation of Christ, I feel we can see the parallel um, between the living water, which is this water that's very healthy for our bodies, and the living water, which is Christ. And you can start seeing like a mirror there too, like a parallel. Like, why is this water so healthy? Like, it's so, and all the scientific details point to Christ. And I find that fascinating that the Lord has given me like this project. Like, yeah, you have your water business, and it's gonna be a way to speak about me too, because living water points to the living water. So that's my water business. I do it with a team, and I find a lot of joy in doing that with my team, sharing the water devices and being able to sell them and help people that are looking for a health solution. And the podcast, that's been a project that has been on my heart since last year. It took me a while to start. Um, but it's a podcast speaking about Jesus without the religious lens. And it's specifically um, directed towards audiences going through some sort of awakening, because I feel like there are so many paths on this awakening, right? Maybe some are coming through the new age, some are coming through the deconstruction of faith, some are coming through all these different paths. And since I went through like the new age background and explored a lot of those beliefs, I've I've been speaking to a lot of those beliefs with like the gospel lens, and how Jesus brings like the higher view and the conclusion to all of those things. Um, so that's the podcast. The name is In the Name of Jesus. Um, and I have like a little slogan. I don't know if it's a slogan, but exploring Christ's revelations without the religious lens.
Very good.
Yeah.
And how do people find you on that? What's the best way?
Um, well, I have my Instagram is Illiana y el agua, which means Illiana and water. Illiana y el agua. And I've been sharing there. I have a link there on my bio where they can find all the options, whether that's on YouTube or on Spotify, because in both platforms, I have them both in English and in Spanish, so they can find it.
Well, and like I said, I'll put that in the notes here in the description for YouTube. When people find this on YouTube, they can check that out as well. So if they want to catch that, and I know on your Facebook you usually post your links too if they follow you on Facebook,
Yes.
and they can watch those videos and stuff. Well, awesome. I am so glad we had a time to chat on here. It's
Mm,
amazing. You're so special.
me too.
One thing that before we wrap up, I like to chat with people a little bit before, but we don't want to do too long because sometimes I have found that the best conversations are before we hit record, the best parts of the conversation. So it's better to just get into it. But Ileana and I had a time where we were just sitting there for a moment, but not in an awkward silence. And it's just in this place of, there's something about just him holding space for people. And that's what we got to experience today. It was very precious to me. Just,
Yeah.
I think we both just felt like lots of emotions in life and things like that. And sometimes it's better to, rather than just rush away from those emotions, we just get to sit with one another with them. And some are heavy, some are so full of joy, some are just unknowns, and we just get to sit with him and feel that presence. I don't know how to do it, but I think he's leading us where rather than just always talking about our faith, our journeys, it's just where we sit with him. Just experience him now rather than talk about him. Sometimes I wonder, does he go, why do they always talk about me but not hang out with me? Say under a microscope, he said hi. He came to say hi. So that's my hope as people watch or wrap up this video, that there's just savoring, even if it's in conversation, to just be like, hey dude, what do you think?
Yeah.
It's like I think you need to just sit in silence for a moment and savor
Mm,
the sounds around you and the eyes that are in front of you,
mm.
the smiles and the giggles.
Yes.
So good. You guys, thanks for tuning in today. It's been such a joy. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as we did.
Mm.
Bye bye for now.